The great hall of the Galactic Council pulsed with a tense, palpable energy. Hundreds of species sat in their tiered seats, their bodies shifting nervously in the dim, sterile glow of the chamber's central dome. Above, the endless expanse of stars shimmered, visible through the transparent ceiling, a harsh reminder of the vast cosmos the Council purported to rule over in unity. Today, however, unity was a shattered illusion. Today, the room held its breath, and all eyes were on a lone human standing at the circular dais below. Commander Elias Trask was unyielding, a stone amidst a sea of restless waves. His scarred face and piercing eyes reflected years of hardship and loss. Draped in the simple, dark uniform of Earth's Fleet Command, he stood without armor, without pomp, but with an aura of steely defiance. Behind him, a small delegation of human representatives watched, their expressions grim. Every species knew why they were here today, but only humans could feel the weight of what was to come. The Council High Speaker, a towering, insectoid being with glimmering chitin, shifted uneasily. Her mandibles clicked as she finally spoke, her voice amplified by hidden speakers. "Commander Trask of Earth," she began, a hint of tension bleeding into her normally detached tone. "You stand before this council once more to present grievances. Your people's persistence has not gone unnoticed." She paused, antennae twitching. "But your demands for reparations and sovereignty must be tempered. The galaxy cannot bend to one world's scars." A ripple of murmurs spread across the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others hissed or rumbled in disapproval. Trask's gaze never wavered. He let the silence settle, every heartbeat punctuating the room's growing unease. "Persistence?" Trask's voice cut through the chatter, low, but resonant with an edge honed by countless battles. "You misunderstand us, High Speaker. Humanity's wounds are deep, and our scars are many. We came here seeking justice. But you dismissed our dead as collateral. You demanded our compliance, while your fleets razed our colonies. Tell me, High Speaker, how long should a species beg before it's allowed to stand?" The murmurs grew louder. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others stared with predatory interest. This was more than another plea. There was a dangerous finality in his words, a raw, unspoken threat that sent a chill through the hall. "Humanity will stand," Trask continued, his voice rising, "with or without your council. But be warned. There comes a time when even the most patient species reaches its breaking point." The chamber fell silent again, heavy with anticipation. Every being present knew something had shifted. The fragile pretense of peace hung by a thread, and Commander Trask was poised to cut it. The High Speaker's eyes narrowed, multifaceted and unreadable, but the subtle movement of her antennae betrayed her discomfort. "Commander Trask, your tone skirts the edge of insubordination," she hissed, her voice crackling with barely suppressed tension. "The Council exists to maintain galactic order, not to cater to a single species' grievances. Your people's suffering, regrettable though it may be, is not unique." Trask's jaw clenched, but his expression remained coldly composed. "Unique," he echoed. "Allow me to remind this council of exactly what transpired." He took a step forward, each footfall echoing in the cavernous hall. 20 years ago, the Vrishak Armada decimated 5 of our colonies. Entire settlements erased in hours. When Earth appealed to this council for aid, you turned away. When we sought justice, you labeled our cries as noise. His eyes swept the assembled delegates. We were left alone to rebuild from ashes, and our people paid the price with their blood. A ripple of discontent passed through the chamber. Several representatives, members of species more sympathetic to humanity's plight, nodded subtly. Others, allies of the Vrishak and their ilk, exchanged pointed glances, clearly uncomfortable with the truth laid bare. The The High Speaker's mandibles clicked sharply. Earth's retaliation, unprovoked and disproportionate, sparked chaos across half the galaxy. Your people's defiance risked destabilizing entire sectors. Retaliation? Trask's voice rose, his composure cracking just enough to let a spark of fury slip through. You call defending our homes retaliation? We asked for protection. When it was denied, we fought back. Alone, from the upper tiers, a deep, guttural laugh resonated, drawing all eyes. The source was a hulking Torvan delegate, his armored hide glinting under the chamber's light. "Ah, humans and their wounded pride," he sneered, his voice like grinding stones. "You act as if your suffering is special. War is the way of the stars. Those too weak to survive it perish." Trask's eyes locked onto the Torvan. "You speak boldly from the safety of this chamber, delegate," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Would you be so confident if you faced us on the battlefield?" The Torvan growled, his clawed hands flexing. "Careful, human. Enough!" The High Speaker's voice cracked like a whip, silencing the room. "This council is not a place for threats." "Then let's speak of justice instead." Trask pressed, his tone hardening. "The Vrishak continue to operate freely. Their atrocities go unpunished because they serve your interests. And we, the ones who dared resist, are labeled as aggressors." A thin, robed alien, eyes dark and reflective, leaned forward. "Commander Trask, your accusations have been heard before. What do you seek now? More vengeance?" Trask turned, meeting the gaze of each delegate who dared look him in the eye. "We seek recognition of our sovereignty. We demand reparations for the lives stolen, the homes destroyed. And we will no longer tolerate the hypocrisy of this council." Murmurs erupted again, this time louder, with clear divisions among the species present. The council chamber seemed to pulse with rising heat as tensions spiraled upward. Commander Trask interjected a soft but firm voice. It belonged to Jara Valen, a human diplomat who had accompanied Trask and now stepped forward. Her calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm brewing around them. "This council must understand that humanity's resilience is born of necessity, not desire. We have rebuilt, but we will not be crushed again." The High Speaker's antennae twitched. "And if this council refuses your demands?" Trask's expression hardened, a dark resolve settling over him. "Then humanity will do what it has always done. We will stand, we will fight. And if necessary, we will burn those who threaten our survival." Silence fell, deeper and heavier than before. The High Speaker's gaze met Trask's unblinking. "Are you prepared for the consequences?" Trask stepped closer to the dais, his voice quiet, but carrying to every corner of the room. "Are you?" The question hung in the air, a challenge and a warning both. Around the chamber, eyes widened, fists clenched, and the realization dawned. This was no longer a negotiation. It was a reckoning waiting to ignite. The silence was deafening, the air thick with the weight of unspoken threats. Commander Trask stood motionless at the dais, his gaze fixed on the High Speaker. Around him, the murmurs of dissent and disbelief from the Galactic Council faded, replaced by an electric tension. Every being in the chamber sensed that the line had been crossed, and there would be no turning back. Without warning, the chamber's central display crackled to life. Holographic images flickered above, casting ghostly light across the assembled delegates. Footage of human colonies being obliterated, of civilians fleeing in terror, of Vrishak warships raining fire from the sky. Gasps and cries of outrage filled the hall, some genuine, others performative. The images shifted, this time showing humanity's desperate counterattacks, makeshift fleets fighting against overwhelming odds. Trask had prepared for this moment, and now he let the truth speak louder than his words ever could. "Look at it," Trask demanded, his voice vibrating with restrained fury. "This is what we endured. This is what you ignored." The High Speaker's mandibles twitched in barely concealed anger. "Enough of this display. We are not here to relive past conflicts." "Oh, but we are," Trask interrupted, stepping closer. "Because you refuse to see the blood on your hands." His eyes blazed, and the temperature of the room seemed to rise with his words. "Humanity has been patient. We have begged. We have pleaded. But today, I stand before you not as a petitioner, but as a warning." At that moment, a low hum reverberated through the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. Delegates glanced around, confusion giving way to alarm. Trask allowed himself a small, grim smile. "Do you feel it?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "That is the pulse of 1,000 human ships surrounding the station." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates leapt from their seats, shouting, arguing, demanding answers. The High Speaker's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "This is madness, Commander. An act of war." No, Trask's response was cold and final. "This is what happens when you push a people too far." Beside him, Jara Valen stepped forward, her eyes hard but resolute. "We are not here to destroy, but if you continue to disregard our sovereignty, to treat human lives as expendable, we will not hesitate to fight. For every Vrishak fleet, there will be 1,000 human torpedoes. For every injustice ignored, there will be a reckoning." A flicker of fear crossed the High Speaker's alien features. She leaned forward, her voice low but trembling. "You cannot possibly hope to win. The Council's forces are vast, our alliance is deep. Perhaps," Trask conceded, "but unlike you, we fight for our very survival. For every child lost, for every family torn apart, we have become what you feared. A species that refuses to break." As if to punctuate his words, a human officer approached, saluting sharply before whispering into Trask's ear. The commander's jaw clenched. He nodded once before addressing the council again. "Your allies, the Vrishak, have crossed another of our borders. Even as we speak, they slaughter civilians. This ends now." A holographic display ignited once more, showing live footage of human ships engaging Vrishak war vessels. The battle was brutal. Raw energy beams slicing through the void, hulls buckling under relentless assault. The delegates stared, some in horror, others in silent calculation. This was humanity, no longer pleading, but fighting back with everything they had. "Stop this!" the High Speaker shrieked. "There must be another way." There was, Trask said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It died when you turned your backs on us." Tears glistened in Jara Valen's eyes, but her resolve never wavered. "We came here hoping for peace. But if the galaxy wants war, we will not cower." A cold, heavy silence descended. For a long, agonizing moment no one spoke. The High Speaker's gaze flitted from the display to Trask, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she spoke, her voice thin and brittle. "What do you want?" Trask stepped back, his eyes hard but weary. "A chance to stand, to be treated as equals, not as prey. Recognize our sovereignty, punish those who violate it, and understand this. If you continue to turn a blind eye to our suffering, we will bring the fight to your doorstep." A murmur of reluctant agreement rippled through the chamber. Slowly, painfully, the High Speaker inclined her head. "This council will consider your demands." "It's a start," Trask replied, his voice hollow. He turned, signaling to his delegation. The tension in his posture remained, but the spark of defiance burned brighter than ever. Humanity had reached its breaking point, and in doing so had forced the galaxy to take notice. The pulse of the ships surrounding the station faded, but the weight of the moment lingered, a silent promise of what would come should the council falter again. "We made them listen," he said softly to Jar Valen, his eyes flickering with a mixture of exhaustion and fierce determination. "For now," Jar replied, her voice tempered by both relief and wary caution. "The council's words are slippery. Promises may crumble when their fear subsides." Trask nodded. "Then we must be ready. Our survival depends on their compliance, and our strength—" His gaze turned toward the transparent ceiling, where the stars glimmered. For centuries, they had been symbols of hope and possibility. Now, they were reminders of humanity's precarious place in a vast, dangerous galaxy. In the weeks that followed, the Council issued formal decrees acknowledging humanity's sovereignty and condemning the Vrishak's actions. Reparations began to trickle in, and tentative alliances formed with species that had quietly admired humanity's resilience, but feared openly supporting them before. Yet for every new ally, there remained old adversaries, lurking in shadows, plotting retaliation. Late one evening, in a quiet moment aboard the flagship of Earth's fleet, Trask and Valen stood together, watching as technicians repaired battered ships returning from skirmishes. "This isn't the end, is it?" Valen asked, her voice soft but resigned. "No," Trask admitted, his eyes never leaving the scene below. "It's a beginning. We've gained a seat at their table, but it comes with a blade pressed to our backs." Valen considered his words, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps that's what makes us stronger." Trask turned to her, a flicker of a smile crossing his lips. "Perhaps. But if they think we'll fall again, they're wrong." As they stood together, the stars outside seemed to pulse with a new intensity, a warning and a promise. The galaxy had seen humanity's breaking point. Now, it would have to reckon with what came after.